As the song goes, this is a man's world, but it'd be nothing without a woman or girl. So, imagine the kerfuffle when all of the women and girls all around the world fall asleep, leaving just the men to rule the place. Yeah, crazy. Here are 19 reasons to read Sleeping Beauties. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Dave Musson, at Dave Musson on Instagram, and this is the place where I'm taking you through the works of Stephen King in chronological order and giving you 19 reasons to read all of his books. Why 19? Well, it's an important number in the world of Stephen King, and hey, it stands out a bit more than 10. Sure, it's more work for me, but I'm willing to do that for you, dear watcher. Now, if that sounds like something you would like more of, do click around the rest of my channel. You'll find lots of videos, and hey, why not consider subscribing as well so you don't miss any in the future. There's also a bunch of specials on this page. One of my particular favorites is my top 10, was it 10? My countdown of Stephen King's scariest stories, which I did for a Halloween special in 2021. But it's almost Halloween again, so why not check it out one more time. Now for this video, we are still in 2017, and after the light snack last time of Gwendy's button box, we're up to the chunky main course that is Sleeping Beauties. Now I'm going to give you 19 reasons to read this thick book, but I will cluster any spoilery reasons towards the end, and I will let you know when they're coming. So if you've not read Sleeping Beauties yet and you want to dip out before the spoilers, you can do just that. Right, settle down, get comfy. Let's go for this. Here are 19 reasons to read Sleeping Beauties. So not only was this King's second release of 2017, but it was his second collaboration, this time with his youngest child, Owen King. Now, King had collaborated with his eldest son, Joe Hill, a couple of times for some short stories, but this was the first bit of collab he did with Owen. Now, Owen is an author in his own right. He's got a great novel called Double Feature that I wholeheartedly recommend. He also ended up writing a couple of episodes of the more recent remake of The Stand. Awkward. So this book is also set in West Virginia, which, unless my memory has failed me, is the first time King has taken us back to that particular state since Charlie and her dad were taken away to the shop in Firestarter. Like I said, I'm pretty sure that's right, unless there's a short story here and there. But to be honest, I could be wrong, because, friends, I am tired. It's quite fitting, given that we're talking about a book called Sleeping Beauties. So the genesis for this was pretty simple. Owen had the idea, talked about it with his dad, they started working, and kept working, and kept working, and ended up with a chunky book. Simple. So what's the hook of this one? What is the idea that Owen brought to his dad that they decided to work on together? Well, it's quite a basic one. For some unknown reason, all of the women all over the world mysteriously fall asleep, and when they fall asleep, their bodies become wrapped in this weird cocoon. Now, they can't be woken up. If someone tries to wake them up or remove the cocoon, those women get murderously violent. Now, this sleeping disease is dubbed Aurora, and as you can tell, it leaves the men in charge, which does not go well. So we see this tale from the town of Dooling, West Virginia, and we spend a lot of our time there in the women's prison. Now, just before Aurora hits the world, a strange, mysterious woman turns up in Dooling, a woman called Eve Black, who rocks up, murders two guys who were making their own meth factory out on the edge of town, murders them horrendously violently, I should add, and then willingly allows herself to be arrested and taken to the prison. Thing is, she knows things about people, and she seems to be absolutely key to this whole Aurora business. So as it turns out, the women aren't actually just asleep. They've been transported to an alternative dimension where it's basically the same town they live in, except it's really not. Time moves differently, and they are bound by this magic tree with a giant fuck-off tiger, and yeah, it sounds silly already, doesn't it? So as you can see, this is a long book, and this is one of those Stephen King books that starts with a cast list at the front. Now usually that is a sign that we are in for a good time. Less so with Sleeping Beauties. If you're expecting this one to fly by like similar Doorstoppers, Needful Things and Under the Dome does, please adjust those expectations before you pick this book up. It's a bit of a slog, and I'm not the only constant reader out there to have found that. So we spend a lot of time with Chief of Police Lila Norcross, who is a great character and is someone that we are willing to stay awake for fear of who will take over if she falls asleep. So naturally, with the women out of the picture, the men go a bit crazy, particularly when they discover that they can set fire to the cocoons and kill the women, which in that alternative world that they've been transported to makes them simply disappear. Things get nasty pretty quickly, and those sleeping women, their bodies wrapped in those cocoons, become highly valuable property. So something interesting in this one that is articulated brilliantly by my friend Scott Woods in his excellent lecture Stephen King and Magical Negroes, which I'll put the link into in the description. He points out that two of the lead characters here, Jeanette Sawley and Frank Geary, are both black characters, and yet we don't get that confirmed in the narration for hundreds of pages after they appear. The colour of their skin is not their defining characteristic, and it is not shoved in our faces every single time they are on a page. It's almost as if characters can be non-white and still have an incredibly important role to play in the story. I think he did it, guys. 44 years into his career. Now this one feels like it has the potential to be a really good TV show, and it has been talked up as a possible adaptation. One adaptation that has happened to Sleeping Beauties is it was turned into a comic book, the first issue of which dropped in the summer of 2020. Yes, a comic book adaptation of a story about effectively a pandemic dropping in the middle of a global pandemic. Nice one. Now for me, the idea of this story is great, but it could have been executed in a much tighter fashion. However, it does get bonus points from me because I imagine that the politics in here that are not subtle in any way at all, i.e. women better than men, women better at making decisions and building loving, caring societies better than men. Those politics probably pissed off the kind of people who are worth pissing off at every opportunity. So, 1 point extra at least for Sleeping Beauties, just for that. Oh, and there is one scene that is absolutely fucking horrific, and I will mention that in more detail when we get to the spoilers section. In fact, let's jump to those spoilers right now. If you need to leave here, take care and sleep well. Otherwise, stick around because I've got a few more reasons to read Sleeping Beauties just for you. Okay, that horrific scene I mentioned. 3 words. Steak, knife, episiotomy. So ironically, where this book really loses me is actually where it starts to ramp up. By the time we get to stolen bazookas and prison raids and violence everywhere and action across all sides, I'm just kind of like, it feels like a bit of a poor knockoff of when the shit hits the fan in Needful Things. And I've read Needful Things, and it's better than this. So the crux of this one effectively comes down to a decision. So Eve Black is finally allowed to join the women in our place, which is what they've labelled this alternative world that they've been transported to. And Eve gives them a choice. Stay put or return to your regular world and have all the women all around the world wake up when they do. They decide to go home, which on the face of it sounds like a happy ending, but scratch the surface, as is often the way with King, and you'll discover that things are not quite as rosy as they might seem once all of the hubbub has died down. So this book regularly features towards the bottom of people's Stephen King rankings, mine included. But the often lazy reason I see out there is people just blame Owen's involvement for it. It's an easy one to go for because that's the thing that's different here. But I don't think that's fair. As I mentioned at the start, I've read Owen King's novel Double Feature and it is excellent. So I just think this one actually just needed a more ruthless editor. There's the potential for something really good here, and there are some great passages in it, but I'm not having it that Owen is the reason that this one perhaps didn't hit the mark with most people. Not having that at all, even if his episodes of The Stand and most of the other episodes of The Stand were not so good. So being a West Virginia king rather than a Maine king, there's not that many Easter eggs here, but there are a few passing references. We get mentions of a dead zone, of grey matter, of nubbins, there's a group of 19 men, and obviously there is a dead dog. And one of the women in the prison suffers from insomnia, which turns out to be quite useful as it happens. Finally, a nice little nod here that I enjoyed seeing on the page. The prison library is described as being well stocked and particularly points out that it has books by Peter Straub, Clive Barker and Joe Hill, keeping it in the family. So there we go, 19 reasons to read Sleeping Beauties by Stephen and Owen King. Not my favourite by any means, but worth a read and an interesting one to look at. If you've given this one a go, let me know what you thought of it in the comments. If you enjoyed that video, there's loads more here on my channel. Go and click around, see if I've done your favourite book yet. Chances are I probably have, because we've not got many left after this. So go and check those out, and if you enjoy those videos, why not hit subscribe so you don't miss any in the future. Don't worry that we're getting close to the end of the books. Got plenty planned, don't you worry about that. And if you want to check out some of my specials as well, there's loads that you can have a look at. I'm going to pick a random one for you now. Let's have a think. My top 10 Stephen King books. Or at least my top 10 Stephen King books back when I started this channel a couple of years ago. Who knows how it might have changed by the time we get to the end of this little journey. Subscribe and you'll find out. Next time, we've got an outsider to deal with.